I am Dan Brown. I am Kanban Dan on Twitter and Skype and everything else. I own the brand. But no, I work for a company called Provoke. My job is to be a Kanban coach, Agile coach and trainer. I'm also with the Lean Kanban University. That's the standards body for Kanban. Kind of like Scrum and Alliance in a very small way for Kanban. So we're trying to make sure that we keep the quality of Kanban training, coaching and everything else at a high standard. So I did ask last time I was at this meetup what you wanted me to cover, if you wanted a deep topic or a shallow topic, because I know how agilists can be. Some people know a lot about this subject, some people a little. So what I've done is I've done the first half of this to be, this is about Kanban. This is what Kanban's for, what it's about, and go from there. Second half, I'm going to give you a choice. So you're going to have to pay attention and decide what you want to do. But we'll get to that. So first of all, Kanban. Kanban is a tool for delivering knowledge work better. So while it came, and for skipping slides apparently, Kanban came from lean manufacturing, just the same as Agile did. Slightly different route, but from the same set of things. So it comes from systems thinking. Deming goes off to Japan. Taichi Ono says he looks like he knows what he's talking about. The Toyota production system is born. Lean manufacturing is born, from which came Agile, also came Kanban. So they came from the same kind of places. It's all born from systems thinking, thinking about the system that we work in. So Agile's in exactly the same place. Doesn't just apply to IT. If you know about complexity theory, and I thoroughly suggest you go and learn about complexity theory if you don't, then knowledge work is complex adaptive. IT is complex adaptive. Kanban isn't prescriptive of one thing or another, so it will work pretty much in either of those spaces. So if you're doing a marketing program, you could probably do it using Kanban. In fact, if you are, give me a shout. I'd love to see it working. I'd love to be involved with that. It is a visual management technique. However, it is not only a visual management technique. If you have a Kanban board, it does not follow that you are doing Kanban. It follows that you've done step one of Kanban, which is make it visible. I keep jumping slides. It's terrible, isn't it? It's the kit. It's letting me down. So Kanban board is only step one. That's the very thinnest layer of Kanban. So hopefully you're all using boards, whether they're using Scrum task boards, Kanban boards, or you've just tweaked your own board a little bit to talk more about the way you do work. That's great. Is anybody here not using boards? Visualization. I should have asked that the other way around. Is everybody using boards and visualization? Yay! Let's get the audience involved. Absolutely. Great. Fantastic. Keep an eye on it for me. Tell me when it's there again. You see, this would have been better in December. So, what it really is, though, is a method for evolutionary change. I do like ripping images off the web. Terrible habit, I know, but I like this one. So, if it's anything, if you're going to pigeonhole it as anything, this is what Kanban is about, the Kanban method. What's sometimes called Big K Kanban. It's about evolutionary change. I'll let you take that photograph quickly, because I'm going to press that button quite quickly. But it's also a way of dealing with complexity and emergence. So I mentioned complexity twice already in the first couple of minutes. Hopefully this imparts to you that that's what we're working in. Complexity is really important to everything we do. Now, typical Agile techniques like Scrum are really good at dealing with the emergence we get from... I've remembered why this is doing this now. I ripped these slides from a presentation I did on a webinar recently, and it's set to auto time. I'm going to have to be clicking back an awful lot. This is why you should run through your deck before you talk, isn't it? Anyway, it's a way of dealing with complexity. And as I say, Agile techniques are really good at dealing with the emergence you get from having complex adaptive requirements. What that means is, while you're writing your software or doing your knowledge work, the thing that you're trying to do is changing because of the software you've written or the knowledge work you have done. It has changed what you want to do. So you might think you're going to do this thing here, but then you get into the code and it's nasty and gnarly and horrible things happen here. So it changes your approach and actually changes what you're going to try and do. Or it might be as you show the stakeholder what you're doing as you're doing it, they say, ooh, could you just do this instead? And so it changes. So it's complex, adaptive. That leads to emergence in work, so you end up with a growing backlog. You You end up with those negotiations of, well, you can drop that story for this story, or we'll change the way we're doing it. All those kind of things. Agile is really good at dealing with that level of adaptiveness, that level of emergence. What Kanban tries to layer on top is saying, it's not just the requirements that are complex adaptive. It's the work you're doing, the environment you're working in as well. Pretend you're a marketing executive at Nokia. You used to know how to sell phones. You made it really simple. What you did is you made a little block of plastic, and you put that block of plastic into the next James Bond film or the next big blockbuster. Then by the time the film came out, you'd have a phone ready, which you'd only have a few of, because obviously you want to make some false scarcity. That marketing tactic still seems to work for Apple. If you've noticed, the 5S is still out of stock. So make some scarcity, and then you sell lots of phones. And it worked for them, right up until Apple says, we're going to make a new product. We're going to make the first phone everyone wants to have in their pocket. Ooh, we have to change the way we're doing things. Then Google turns up, haha, we can do Android. Then Windows turn up, haha, and then BlackBerry say, well, we do this too, hello, we don't just make pages anymore. And all of a sudden, the market has changed around Nokia. There was emergence and complex adaptivity in the market and the context they're working in. So you need to think of that extra layer. It isn't just about saying what we're doing is changing. The way we have to do things also has to keep changing to adapt to our changing environment. Okay? So that's what Kanban's trying to address. It's a descriptive method. I spent a year and a half working at a fashion company, which may have tailored some of my views of the world. However, there is a fable, and it may well be true, that if you go into the changing rooms of certain women's clothes shops, the mirrors will make you look a bit skinnier than you actually are. The skinny mirror effect. So you're more likely to buy their clothes because you look better in their mirror. That's the idea. Kanban can't be like that. So it isn't about having an idealized visualization of what you've got. When you are doing a visualization, you want the warts and all. When I look in the mirror, I'm not going to see the man with the six-pack and the chiseled jaw. I want to see an overweight man. My reaction shouldn't be to pick up a Sharpie and try and change my image in the mirror, because that's not really going to help anything. Having this idea of having a prescriptive method of the mirror must look like this, therefore I'm going to change the mirror. No. The mirror is describing me. Kanban is a descriptive method. But that's good, because when I look at the mirror in the morning, I can see things like, what's the next thing I need to work on, apart from my slide deck? Do I need to have a shave because I'm going to a client today? Do I need to get a haircut because it's getting a bit long, and it's been a bit long and I'm getting a bit of helmet hair from my motorbike helmet? Or do I actually just need to go on a diet and do some exercise? And then look at the mirror afterwards, and I'll see where I am now. So it isn't one of these techniques where you have, this is how you are, this is the dream state. How do we get from where you are to your dream state? It doesn't start with the dream state. It starts with, this is where you are, this is how things are right now. This is probably the problem you want to fix first today. So this morning it was have a shave. A couple of days at home is terrible for me. It is. So it is not prescriptive. It's not saying, do this and you'll get that. So if I have one criticism of Scrum, it isn't actually of Scrum. It's of the way we all understand that word to mean. Scrum is actually more like an ethos. It's more about doing things an agile way. It's about inspect and adapt. It's about the values and the principles that led to the Scrum framework. But we all read this Scrum guide, which tells you about the framework of Scrum, which is really a set of rules for software delivery, right? You must have 7 plus or minus 2 people. You must have a cross-functional team. You must have sprint planning. You must have a daily stand-up of less than 15 minutes. You must groom mid-sprints, and so on. These are prescriptive rules. And that's actually not what Scrum's about, but it's certainly not what Kanban's about. Kanban does not provide you a solution to implement like Scrum does. It doesn't start with a framework. It doesn't give you that start for 10. Actually, that was on time. Kanban is a pull system. This slide is not showing a pull system. This is a push system. Our motorway network is a push system. We know this to be true because you listen to the radio and they'll tell you that the M25 has tailbacks because of sheer weight of traffic. And I just did the finger thing. Perhaps if you were a Kanban person, or I like Kanbanista, mix of Japanese and Spanish. If you're a Kanbanista, what you'd see is too much traffic in progress at any one time. And it's exactly like this. If you have a limited capacity system of any kind, and your demand exceeds the capacity, like this, nobody goes anywhere. If you've got a funnel, and you're trying to get some dry goods through a funnel into a jar or whatever, what you find is the more stuff you put in the funnel at once, the slower the flow through your funnel. It trickles and slows down. It's like you get a new bottle of ketchup, you turn it upside down. Nothing's coming out of that ketchup bottle. You have to sort of tease it very slowly at an angle and try and get flow to happen. So it's about matching your capability to your demand. It's about having a pull system, pulling in traffic as you've got capability to have the traffic in. Someone should put a barrier down and say, right, no more traffic on this road. Because no one's going to go anywhere. And the more we try and push more traffic onto this road, the less is going to happen. And I'm sure we've all worked in situations at work where you've got a dev team, right, can they do this as well? And you get work pushed into the team. So Scrum uses sprint planning to try and limit the WIP. Interesting. Scrum's limiting WIP. Just a thought. So why would you use Kanban? So you want to visualize your work and your capability to deliver that work. That's two separate things. This is the system you're working in, but this is the work going through the system. That is that's a waterfall showing flow really badly on a very light background. Sorry. So why would you use Kanban to do that? Well, it is based on lean management, but it's got this focus on delivering the value. It's about getting the value out there, but with quality. It's a real quality-focused thing as well. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It's a traditional management myth. 0 bugs is too expensive. You must never try and deliver to 0 bugs because it costs too much money. I would say the opposite. Anything other than 0 bugs is too expensive. If you're putting bugs live, you've got to fix them. You're making failure demand. Remember I mentioned systems thinking, where this all came from? System thinking talks about value work and failure demand. Value work is the stuff, what you're trying to get done, the features that you're trying to ship. Failure demand is all the work you have to do to enable that to happen, or the bugs you've got to fix, or the rework you've got to do, all of that waste. You often see Kanban people talk about waste because we like muda. Muda is the Japanese word we use for waste. There's also muri and so on, but we tend to focus on muda because it's nice and easy to talk about waste. Waste is bad. Get rid of the waste. Make it lean. But quality is a great way of doing that. It seems like by adding quality in, you're taking longer to do things. You actually are, measurably so. But because you're doing that, you're actually delivering more value work. When I worked at UVTV back in the day, I walked into this really weird thing where they had this Kanban wall that, I kid you not, was over 30 meters long. And there are a few UV people in here that can recognize that. 2 meters tall, 30 meters long, 6x4 index cards, standard index cards on that wall. Scary thing to see, but what I saw was our little bit, my team, the UI team. And we had all of these yellow cards, which are the value work, the features. But we had all this blue stuff and this red stuff, and the blue was bugs, and red was technical debt, fixing technical debt. And I was regularly beaten up by a guy from a certain consultancy because they needed us to get through 11 features every fortnight. And we're only doing 8 features every fortnight. We're doing another 8 bugs as well, but 8 features every fortnight. So what did we do? We had a quick chat with QA and said, what's going on here? Why are you finding all these bugs? Of course, it's their fault, right? No, we had a chat with them and said, can you come and work with us? Can you actually be in charge of our done column now and actually be in our team? So you're not downstream of us, you're with us. Let's bake quality in. And that actually affected things. It affected the lead time it took us to do each particular story card. Each feature card took longer. I got beat up a bit more at that stage. That wasn't a pleasant experience. But what that meant was we were no longer writing bugs. Sounds simple, but we stopped writing bugs. By stopping writing bugs, we didn't have to fix bugs. The cheapest time to fix a bug is before you write it. Any time after that, the cost keeps going up. The example I use for that one is the Hubble Space Telescope. If you're an astro geek like me, you might remember when that was launched. Hubble didn't work. All the images were blurred. They'd spent billions on this space telescope, and it had actually something called spherical aberration. Oh dear, someone made a mistake converting inches to millimeters. I'm not kidding, they really did. They got the sums wrong. And the mirror on the ground was fine, but the one in space was broken, basically. So what did they have to do? They had to send up 2 shuttle missions to insert a set of special lenses between the mirrors and the cameras. How much do you reckon it costs to send men into space with this thing and put it into a very delicate space telescope that you've had to dock with? That's travelling at thousands of miles an hour. And how many times do you have to practice it in a space suit, in a swimming pool first, before you dare launch the rockets? Never mind all things. Now, would it cost millions to fix it on the factory floor? Absolutely. It costs billions to fix it in space. What I like to then point out is the next space telescope is going up next year. It's called the James Webb Space Telescope, and it's going to be infrared, which means it has to be a long way from here. If I was to say, Earth is here, Hubble is here, the moon is here, the furthest human beings have ever been is here, James Webb's about here. That's not going to say it's going to be impossible to fix bugs when it's launched, but it's going to be very, very expensive, and we're going to have to do things we've never done as a species before. That's an extreme example. Most of us aren't building space telescopes. However, the point is, fixing bugs before you write them is really important. It actually says, and I don't know if you have, has anyone by show of hands read David Anderson's blue book, Kanban? Okay. You might remember this line. I love it. He turned up at Microsoft and says, I give you permission not to write any more bugs. Fantastic thing to say to your department of 170 people. But what he said was, he clarified it a little bit. If a project manager is beating you up to launch something, as you as a developer, QA analyst, whatever you do, think it isn't ready and it's still got bugs in it, send that project manager to come and see me and I'll tell them why you're not launching that product for you. Don't ship anything unless it's right. 0 bugs, out the door. That mattered. And because of that change in culture, it meant they spent less time fixing bugs. And to finish my UView story, what happens? Well, a couple of months later, and I'm not kidding, it took a couple of months, because we'd been chucking rubbish out the door so long that the test team couldn't keep up with the amount of rubbish finding the bugs we had, we dropped off. We stopped writing bugs. They stopped finding bugs. We stopped having to fix them. Suddenly we weren't doing this 8 number that we were before. Remember, 8 was where we were, 11 was the target. We were doing 15. And also I looked around, and all of this time we had 18 open seats, or 18 seats for developers in the team. But we only ever had 13 plus or minus 2 people in them, because the skill set we were after was really hard to find, and whenever we found one, we lost one. They were all contractors anyway. All of a sudden we had 18 people, 18 happy people, telling their friends that they should come and work at UView. Strange thing, that. So one of the other things that I'm not going to talk about tonight is a little thing on the side about motivation. But there's a guy called Dan Pink. He's done a really good YouTube video on that. I recommend anything by anyone who's called Dan, who has a surname that is a colour especially. It adds extra credence to it. However, Dan Pink's thing on motivation, mastery, autonomy and purpose. Mastery, we're allowed to be proud of what we do. If we're proud of what we do, we're likely to like what we're doing. We're likely to tell our friends down the pub, come work here, rather than, have you got any jobs going where you're at? Just one of those things.
Sorry, who was the author of the first book you mentioned?
David J. Anderson. But I can give you some links later as well. Please do come and talk to me. So I've mentioned focusing on quality and delivering value, so you're not delivering all the bug fixes, because you don't need them anymore. You're still going to need to fix bugs, just less of them. Bugs happen anyway, even if you care about them, but let's get rid of them as early as we can. But also shortening lead times and improved delivery rates. I should explain what these things are. Lead times and delivery rates are industry standard terms that mean completely different things in every different industry. So, lead time is from when we commit to doing something until when we have done something. That's different from when we start work on something till we have finished it. It is from when we commit to it to when it is done. So if you're doing Scrum, and you're doing traditional sprint planning, your commit point is sprint planning. You might then not start the story you've committed to because it's one of the lower priority ones or whatever till, I don't know, week 2 of your sprint. The clock starts on day 1. You've committed. The product owner now has an expectation of this thing being delivered till it's finished. So average lead time is really important in a team. So it's from when we start to when we finish. Delivery rate is how frequently we deliver. So it's a measure of throughput. So that is how many, if we're going to go and Scrum again, if we're going to use XP stories, how many stories we finish per day. So if your team finishes 1 story every other day, you're doing 0.5 stories per day on average as your delivery rate. So that's really important that we understand these metrics. And everybody can get these metrics and should be getting these metrics. Ryman sell these little things that have date stamps to put on your cards, if nothing else. Trust me, if you can get this and work this out, your life will be made a lot easier. So what does Kanban give us? I've already told you you've got to do a bit extra work and measure your lead time. So it gives us visibility. It lets us know what's happening, where our work is, how our projects are doing. It isn't just for the teams. It isn't trying to be just for the teams. It's trying to be for an organization, for a project, for a department, for a program. It's trying to understand where everything is. So I mentioned you've used 30-meter wall. If only I knew then what I know now. A 30-meter wall is no use to anybody. The 30-meter wall tells you we're really busy and we've got lots of stuff and it's all over there. What you really need is a summary level, a top level of something like a project or a feature. Where's this feature at? Keep it at the top level and then break down. So if you're thinking about epics, perhaps, that's a common terminology we use in Agile, and I think we all understand. So where are these epics at? Never mind the stories underneath them. At the top level, your head of organization cares about the big things, not the little things. They want to know you care about the little things. They don't want to care about themselves so that they can't see the wood from the trees. They need to be at that higher level view. So understanding where our project is across multiple teams especially, Kanban can help us with that because it makes everything visible. There isn't a set solution. It's up to you to find out how to do that. There are ways we can help you with that, but Kanban says you must make things visible. It helps with predictability. Agile methods are typically very good at forecasting in the very short term. Agile teams get very good at understanding what we're going to do in the next fortnight. Next 2 fortnights, we're kind of all right with. When's my project going to be finished? Is it 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, a year? Not so much. There's a bit of a blind spot in there. There's a big movement, which I'll come to later potentially, it's going to be up to you, called the hashtag no estimates movement in Kanban. I can tell you some good things and some bad things about that. But Kanban uses these things called, well, I'm not going to tell you what they're called, the horrible technical things you don't need to know about, you just need to know someone else does, that will help you understand a predictability model that will let you predict when a project will run and when it will finish. And will give you a likelihood of how likely that is to finish by a particular date. And talk about risks and how risk-averse your stakeholder is. And talk about what you can do about things. But I'm preceding myself. You can come to that a lot later. Continuously improving flow. That's the best graphic I could come up for flow. That's kind of flowy, isn't it? It's amazing what comes back in Google when you're searching for things. So Kanban's all about flowing of work. So if you remember the motorway picture I showed you earlier, nothing was flowing. So it's about understanding how can we allow continuous flow. Hands up if you've seen the Agile Manifesto. That's most people in the room. Hands up if you clicked through and saw the principles behind the Agile Manifesto. Ooh, a few less hands. Go away, click on that. Not now. We haven't got time. Tonight, go click on that. Tomorrow at work, click on the principles behind it. There are 12 of them. One of them is called sustainability. I don't know if you've ever come across this metaphor, but I've heard Scrum referred to as working continuously with your back against the wall. Now, I hasten to say at a really bad Scrum implementation, because that's where that happens. But it does happen. where people find themselves in this racetrack of always trying to race and finish, and always being on that phase at the end of a project where you're never quite there and you're knackered and you're working long hours. That's not how Agile's meant to be. The 12 Agile principles, one of them is sustainability. You can work indefinitely at this pace, forever. That's what we're talking about, having a flow. That means you can work at this pace, measurably, predictably, deliver the project, get the thing finished, increase your productivity, and keep improving the flow. Keep reducing your lead times. I mentioned those earlier. That's going to be important. And getting work out the door without killing anybody, while making your devs go down and your QAs and everybody else go down the pub and saying, hey, come work here. It's great. If you're coming to an event and saying, I could come and work here, that you're not working in one of these places. But continuous improvement. Talking of which, give the cable a waggle. Didn't work. That's better. Kanban, there you go. Kanban is about provoking conversations. It's not about providing you answers. It's about making you think about your problem space, making you understand your context. Remember I mentioned your context changing all the time? And if you're not careful, it'll come and eat you, like Nokia. Remember the Nokia test? I think there should be a new Nokia test. Are you still market leader in your field? Yes or no? No, that's harsh, isn't it? If anyone works here at Nokia, I really do apologise. But no, it's about understanding that the work market changes around you, the context changes. And you need to have these conversations about what's going on. Why is what worked last week not working this week? What's better? What's worse? What's changed? What do we need to change? These are important conversations you need to have. And that's why the visualization is really useful. It's not the only thing that will provoke conversations, but it's the first thing that will. Remember I mentioned earlier, looking in the mirror? Do I need to have a shave? Do I need to get a haircut? Do I need to go on a diet? Those things, the feedback tells me where I need to focus my energies right now. And similarly, Kanban, a Kanban visualization, and all the tools and metrics you've got should be telling you the information about what you need to change. It's about making your problem space visible. So I mentioned I'm an astro geek. I'm sorry, I can't help it. So it's not about seeing the whole galaxy sometimes. It's about seeing the galactic core. What's going on around the black hole right now? By the way, it's swallowing a massive gas cloud. That's what's going on around the galactic core right now. Principles. I mentioned 12 already. Here's 4 new ones. Start with what you do now. Sounds like a really easy thing to do, doesn't it? How many methods have you come across that don't say start with a dream state of someplace in the future? Start with what you do now. Don't try and be something you're not. Make visible how you are now. Let that guide you in what you need to improve. Respect current roles, responsibilities, and job titles. One of my friends and colleagues once said a wonderful thing at a client that didn't go down very well. He'd been explaining the Scrum roles. And during his explanation, he said, well, we've got these team members, we've got a Scrum Master, and we've got product owners. And a project manager in the room said, so what do project managers do in Scrum? He said, did you hear me say project managers? Didn't really go down well with the project manager. I've got to say that. If you tell somebody their job is no longer necessary in the process, and actually, guess what? The project management role is pretty important, really. And it still can be found in Agile quite a lot for a good reason. So actually, it's not about saying your role is currently no use to us, or now all of a sudden no use to us, even though it was kind of important for the last 20 years. It's about saying, it's not about us saying to you, you must change from this to that. You're now not a project manager, you're a product owner, or you're a Scrum Master, or you're something else, or you're out of this company, go over there. It's about saying, you're empowered to change your role to what you need it to be. You decide. You are right now this role. Great. Let's look at how that's working. You decide what you need to change. Make some small changes. Don't drop everything that you do today. Change a little thing. And actually, this is what it's about. It's a scientific method. If you've been watching the Brian Cox program, I'm a science geek. Did I mention? Scientific method is this. And it was part of the Blue Book again. You have a theory about what's going to happen. You come up with a proposition. You then devise an experiment to test the proposition, and then you look at the results. Kanban talks about this a lot. Don't just make a change and see what happens. Think, if I change this, then I expect the lead times to come down, or I expect the bug count to drop. Then do it and see what happens. Measure it. I said that, measure it. You actually have to do some work here. Measure it and see what happens. Did it have the expected outcome? Did it have a different outcome? Is it better or worse than you expected? Should you try something more of this? Should you try something less of this? Actually come up with it. Measure it. See what happens. Do I need to change something in my role? Do I need to give somebody else some empowerment? Do I need to not give them that empowerment? How do I need to act in this particular situation? Is what worked when I was in this team here going to work there? Or are they in a different context? Are they in a different place? If you're a coach, one of the things you really have to work out when you're dealing with people is, how proscriptive do I need to be with you? Are you at the level where you need us to hold your hand and say, this is what you need to do? Or are you at the level where we need to ask you some probing questions and let you to come up with the answers that you already know, but you just want us to help you get to and give you some validation over? Understand the context. The context is really, really, really important. I've mentioned it about 100 times now. Hopefully that's coming across. This is the other thing that's often missed. Agree, double underline and bolden. Agree on incremental and evolutionary change. It's not about one person or one team deciding. We're going to have incremental and evolutionary change. We'll deal with us. Get some agreement. I've yet to see a manager at an organisation say, no, we don't want any improvements here. But actually said, this is how we're going to do it. We're not going to make radical changes. We're going to try and make small changes. We call it Kaizen. We like our Japanese words. Radical changes we tend to call Kaikaku. And it's just an absolute accident that sounds a bit like poo. But that means revolutionary change. We talk about evolutionary change, Kaizen. So it's about incremental and evolutionary changes. We believe you can get there faster by doing small changes. And there will actually be the right place rather than the there you think it is when you start out. Because the there you think it is when you start out is probably wrong anyway. And I said the word believe there, and that was terrible of me. I've been all evangelistic. I am not an evangelist. I am a scientist. I am backed by data. And I should be challenged on any of these things. And I will be challenged on any of these things. That's fine. I'm not saying your beliefs are wrong, change your beliefs. I'm saying we have measured this, and this is how it works. And if I say something, and you try it, and it doesn't work the way I expect, I'd like to know a bit about it, because I probably can help. Well, it's not just me fishing for work, I promise. So, yes, agree on that. So talk to the bosses, talk to everyone in the team, get them to agree on incremental and evolutionary change. The other thing I often mention, a good way to tell that you're about to get kaikaku'd is you'll come into work one day and there'll be a new book on your desk, and it'll be, Who Moved My Cheese? Or Our Iceberg is Melting, or one of those. What's happened to me? Anyone else? Well, that is someone's at senior management deciding we need to make a revolutionary change. We need to have an agile transformation, or we need to have some other big change, or culture change. I worked at TSB when they said 90% of culture changes fail. We're doing culture change now. That was a great way to introduce it. But anyway, the point is, the first thing you've got to do if you're going to do a big change like that is work on the resistance to change. That's only true in Kaikaku, revolutionary change. In Kaizen, there is no resistance to change. Why? Because the people being changed are the people who come up with the changes. I'm not very resistant to my own changes because I came up with them. If it's me and the small team of people who've come up with these changes that I'm part of, I'm not resistant to them. Yeah? Or are you going to waggle for me? I wonder if it's this end, but it's happening vicariously. Don't tell him I fixed it this end. Yeah. It's all good. Anyway, last principle. Encourage active leadership at all levels. So, yes, your CEO or CIO is probably going to be making strategic changes and is going to be responsible for strategic leadership. They've probably got the ladder up out of the forest and checking if you're in the right forest. But while they're doing that, somebody needs to be checking you're on the right path in the forest you're in. If you've got things going on that you can do as a developer or a QA engineer inside a team, inside a department, inside of a program and so on, you can probably see things they can't. You can see things about the technical debt you're building up that you need to address. You can see things about automation that they might not be able to see. You can help things. And you need to encourage active leadership at all levels. You want your senior managers along with the journey. I remember seeing an engineer, Kanban is terrible for tweeting. We really are. If you go to any Kanban conference, all you see is people being tweeted the whole time. And anyone's talking, if this was like a Kanban conference, seriously, I would have been tweeted about 50 times with things I'd said. And this goes around the world. And I just remember seeing someone in America saying, retreat this, and this is why I never tell my manager what we're doing. And I was like, no, you've missed the point. You need to bring them along too. They need to be part of this. They need to see what's changing, what's getting better. If you're doing things secret squirrel, you're missing a lot of the benefit. You're not engaging with them. You're not having them be part of it. You're effectively doing kaikaku on them without even telling them. And they're like senior management. You're not meant to do that to them. They're meant to do it to you. Anyway, all levels. So that's the 4 principles of Kanban. So it's only 16 principles we're up to now. Layer on top of that, the 6 practices of Kanban. There are only 6 things you need to do to say you're doing Kanban method, capital K Kanban. You need to have a clicker that clicks. Hey! Visualize your workflow. You can't stop there. You must continue. This is not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thing. This is a circle that happens to usually start here and rotate. But doing all these things are continuous and will improve and change as the context changes and as your team changes. You need to limit your work in progress. It doesn't say you need to use explicit WIP limits. Common mistake. It says you must limit your work in progress. How you choose to do that is up to you. It's not prescriptive, it's descriptive. That said, if you're testing your software, at some point you're going to have someone saying, this test-driven development thing looks good. And at some point someone's going to say, behavior-driven development is slightly bit better, we should use that. And you're going to bring the testing further and further forward. This is good agile practices. And nothing's changed about that. It's a good practice and it gets better by bringing it forward. It's the same with this. You're probably going to use explicit WIP limits because it's a very good tool for limiting your WIP. But there's nothing saying you must. It's a tool in your arsenal. You must manage the flow of work. There you go. You must. I've been prescriptive. You must make your policies explicit. That's important. You don't have these little locked away in people's brains tacit pieces of knowledge about how you do things. You make it explicit. You make rules. Why? Because we encourage breaking your rules. And if you don't know what your rules are, how are you going to know what you've broken? And how are you going to measure what the effect of breaking that rule was? So make the rule explicit, then choose to say, well, if we break it, we'll probably get this effect. Try it and see if you did. Measure it. You can only do that if you have explicit rules. Feedback loops at all levels. Customers, stakeholders, within the team, within the toilet cleaners, Get feedback wherever you can. No feedback is bad feedback. I remember someone mentioning there are all sorts of people that can have strange sort of effects on your team. Someone in the HR team can make a change to policy whereby we start recycling because we're a green company, which means you can't have a bin under your desk anymore where you used to put all the sticky notes. Now you've got to go to the recycling bin, which is 100 yards over there. And you've just introduced a huge amount of waste into your system every time you're going to chuck some cards away. So you might not then chuck your cards away, which means you might not update your board, which means that you're actually not reflecting how things really are, which means your system's going stale and it's not a true visualization, which means you don't know what to fix. Or because someone in HR made a new rule. Feedback everywhere. Look for it. Actually actively seek it. We talk about retrospection. Not only is ad hoc, Kanban's famous for ad hoc retrospection. So in the Toyota production system, there's something wrong with the car thing. Anyone can stop the line, ad hoc retrospection, fix the process. That way no more cars come through with the same broken whatever it is. We fix the process so it doesn't happen again. We do that, yes, but we still have retrospectives. Well, we don't have to, but you probably should. Certainly, if you do it initially and start with what you do now, you currently do retrospectives, you should probably keep doing them because you need some proactive retrospection as well. How do you make your changes if you don't do anything proactively? Validate improvement. Measure. What got better? How much did it get better? If you don't know those answers, you're not measuring properly. And if you're not measuring properly, how do you know what's going better, and how do you know when things get worse? How do you know when you're working on the right problem? Oh, we fixed it. We're now 1 minute better on our systems. Well, that's not great. Or a day better on our lead time. That's fantastic. Okay. Do you need to buy any special tools? This is the basic slide in case you've never done Agile before. No? You can do it with a board on your wall and sticky notes. However, you can see there is a bit of complexity in here. There are tools. I used to be a sticky note guy. I've got this. I'm now turning more into a tooly kind of guy because of what you can do with links through and drill through, and you can see there's. I mentioned earlier the summary level, and see that the summary level is changing with the other levels, and project visibility within multiple teams. Those integrated systems give you that better than sticky notes do. So you're increasing that visibility from visibility to a team to visibility throughout an organization. However, don't stick it on a system and then don't let anybody see it. If the thing isn't staring you in the face, if you don't have a mirror telling you need to lose a bit of weight, then how do you know you need to lose a bit of weight? So make the thing visible still. You can't hide them away. But tools are good things as well, as long as you get one that isn't restricting how you change. This idea of having multiple teams doing things exactly the same way, it's a fallacy. Each team is operating in a different context. Each team has a different makeup of people within it, and a changing and evolving makeup of people within it. So, of course, they're going to be doing things differently. You've got to embrace that. That doesn't mean you have no control if you're looking over that. No, because you still have lead time, you still have delivery rate, and you still have work in progress. And bug rates. These are easy things that every team, whether you're a Scrum team, Kanban team, Proto-Kanban team, whatever you're doing, you can provide that kind of information that gives that real sense of data and information to the people who care and make the business decisions. Because, as the former developer in me might regret, the people in dev teams aren't usually the people making the business decisions in an organization. So while they've got the most data in front of them, they're not in the best position to see the wood from the trees and make the business decisions. We need to give the tools to everybody. We need to bring management along with us. They're important. They're quite important to the business. So, where do you go from here? Right, you've all sat quiet too long. I've talked at you. I hate talking at people, although I love the sound of my own voice. I'm going to give you a choice. So I'm going to give you two options. I'm going to give you the why we limit WIP versus statistical forecasting.